Nathan, when I try to understand the subject, I like to think of it as the philosophy of, and so there's the philosophy of science, philosophy of mathematics, philosophy of mind, philosophy of religion, and in exploring the arts, there is a subfield called philosophy of art. You're a philosopher, you I think went to school in art, you produced art yourself.
Yep.
So what's your view of philosophy of the arts? How would you structure it?
Yeah, well, you're right. I did go to art school before studying philosophy, and I actually paid my way through grad school using art.
Oh, wow. That's impressive.
So I do have some experience in that area. And I would say that I don't consider myself an aesthetician, right, or a theorist when it comes to art. But I do have pretty developed self-understanding of what I'm doing as an artist. Now that's largely based on me sort of reverse engineering what am I doing.
But
right?
as a philosopher, you have the intellectual capability and the experience to at least try to do that.
Yeah, and I have tried to do that.
Right.
And really,
what do you find?
And well, what I found was this. I really found that, you know, I started with just the basic notion that art is in some ways skill, right? It's a certain skill set, and I like using the concept of potential to actual, right? This sort of Aristotelian concept that we have certain potentials within us, and that's more than nothing, right? But it's different than actual something, right? So potentially stronger than I am, which is not nothing, right? But it's less than actual strength. And I like to think of artistic skills in those same ways, right? The skill of drawing, of painting, but I don't think it's limited. This is where I wouldn't draw strict divides when I talk about these skills to just things like drawing and painting. But I'll come back to that in a second. The basic concept that I began to develop was the idea that what an artist is one who has cultivated that certain skill set. And the type of artist is determined by what that skill set is. And then what we call art is typically an artifact or an artwork, some sort of outward articulation of that skill set. It's a product of it. And this is one of the reasons why I think that art is not, I think there's an ontological reality to art. Given that relationship, it's not simply I declared art, so it's art. You know, if it's not an extension of the certain skill sets that I have acquired that make me an artist in the first place, then it's not really truly an artwork just because I made it.
I mean, that could be said about a tool. I mean, you could say the same thing about any manufactured product, though, right?
Right. Yeah, that's right. And this is one of the reasons why I'm inclined to say, well, you know, certainly, sure, a chef could be an artist, right? It's a certain skill set, and the food when it's, you know, crafted by that chef is a work of art, right? I don't have a problem with using those sorts of making those sorts of claims and not restricting art to in some ways what's in the gallery or.
Oh no, sure. But how do you then distinguish between using your typology or using your philosophy of art structure between art and not art? The chef is a good example. We'd all recognize there are some chefs that that are artists in what they do, and it's not just how it might look on the plate.
Right.
But what is that fundamental difference where you'd put the art a moniker on one out of 100,000 and not on the other 999,999?
Well, when you say put it on the one, are you talking about a certain thing that we've called a work of art versus another?
Yeah, in other words, you're saying it has an internal skill set, and then you have the artifact itself.
Right.
Now that can be applied to anything, like to this chair.
Yep.
And this is a nice chair, but it's not a work of art.
Right.
So then how do you apply your methodology to determine when there is a chair, and there are chairs that are works of art?
Yeah, and that's where things get a little dicier, you know, because because we do tend to want to draw certain divisions, right, between things that would be art and things that are pure utility and things like that. And obviously, I think there are certain aspects where the natural divisions begin to emerge when you talk about manufacturing, right? A handcrafted chair may well be a work of art more so than a manufactured chair. And so there's some assistance that can be drawn there. But I do think the lines do sometimes get blurred in when it comes to the usual divisions we might want to draw between things that are mundane and we tend to not consider works of art and the things that we do.
The concept of divisions, I like that. You talked about skills and you talked about the artifact. So I like the concept of division. So you're able to have a rage to divide things, and maybe people differ where that occurs. But what are some of the characteristics of the razor that you can divide the art from not art? What would you propose to do?
Yeah, so this is where I think there's a couple of other dimensions that come into play with regard to art. I think there is a question of teleology, right? Purpose, or sometimes function's been used. I don't prefer function. I prefer teleology, right? The end or the purpose of the thing. I think there are morality does seem to come into play. So, for example, with pornography, sometimes it seems that moral dimension, or maybe it's the teleological dimension, but perhaps the moral as well, seems to come into play. That it's crossed certain lines that place it outside the pale of art. It's made it something else. And I think teleology in a similar way also functions, where there are certain things that we acknowledge, well, food is to be eaten, right? And that's maybe not as high of a teleology as building a cathedral, right? Okay, well, so be it. But, that doesn't exclude it from being art. So my inclination is to think you have these sort of intersecting spheres of skill, of morality, of perhaps function or teleology, that all begin to, factor into each other. And it does seem that some of these create boundary lines for when a thing has sort of transgressed its way out of the realm of art.